All right. Hey, welcome everybody to the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I'm your host, Jeff Freeman, and right over there is Jack Campbell. Jack, how you doing today?
Fine, Jeff. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, rainy one here in Western Pennsylvania for sure today. Not too bad, but yeah, it's kind of crappy out, to be honest.
We had
So,
that yesterday, so congratulations. You got it.
yep. Yeah, if you guys hear any banging going on, it will probably be the sounds of my son. He is actually down tearing off the tack strips. We actually pulled some carpeting out and flooring downstairs, and found some underneath the carpeting. We found some beautiful hardwood floor underneath it. So yeah, it was really nice. So he's down there pulling all the tack strips and cleaning all that up. So if you hear the banging going on, that's what that will be. Him working on that downstairs for me. All right. So who we got with us today so far? We got Pat. Hey Pat, how you doing? Glad you're here. Jeff is here. Indy's Antics is here. Glad you guys have joined us for today. Appreciate you coming along. Here we are. We're getting. Are we quite halfway? I guess we are halfway.
Today we start
Yeah,
going down. We start going downward
the
today
second
now.
half. Yeah, the second half of the season. Yeah, with a total of 25 episodes, we're doing 15 and 16 today. 15 being the cask and you shall receive. I like that. Cask and you shall receive. And then 16 being leather bound. We have a special guest that may show up here in just a little bit too, and kind of help us with these as we go along today. So we're hoping for our special guest in a little bit. Hi, Joe. How you doing? Glad you're here with us today. And of course, we have Linda and Jan out there working hard, as always, in the chat today, and all and on the group as well, doing all that they do with keeping everything together. Um,
Keep
for
us in
sure.
line.
Yeah, keep us in line. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, it's been fun. It really has been great, and we've had, we're so fortunate to have some of the people that have joined us along the way here so far. Jumping in, we had James Mcquiston last week. Oh, thanks for the reminder. I know she's getting ready to remind me. I see it typing there. Oh, where is it? I didn't turn the phone on yet. That's what it is. I just saw the reminder come up. Phone.
Yep.
All right, let me get the. I did. That's the one thing
Joe
I did.
Hosley, welcome today.
Huh?
Joe Hosley's with us today. So
Yep. So yeah, last week we had Brian called in. I never did find out what we've got several Brians in the group. I never did find out exactly what Brian that was, but Brian called in last week, so that was fun. And then of course James McQuiston called in. That was
that
fun.
was
Yeah, I love when the folks call in like that. That's really awesome. It really truly is. Um, and kind of help join us on the show and talk
and he
about.
has so much background on that stuff too. I
Oh, I
mean,
know, absolutely. That just makes it so much more fun. Um, Doing this. Okay, folks, I'm waiting for the phone. I'll get the phone up here in just a minute, and I'll put the phone number up as soon as I do. Sorry about that. I should have had that ready. Jenny's getting inky with it. All right, Jenny, thanks for coming by. Appreciate you being here today. So this has been fun going through the season 8 shows, and again, I kind of get a reminder of some of the things that went on. Obviously, some of it kind of they didn't have a lot happening. As far as well, I should say, let me rephrase that. They had a lot happening, but it was over the course of like the road going through in the swamp. And then the explorations of the ball property, which really kind of kicks off in these last couple episodes that we talked about. And then, of course, the money pit. We're nailing all those holes in the ground out there, looking for try to find out exactly where the money pit is. So that's primarily where they spent most of the season going along here. But they had some interesting finds along the way.
it was kind of interesting to get our drilling downs coming through also last Tuesday.
Yeah, and they got a new one, and there's going to be two new ones for the next 2 weeks in a row. Or yeah, and I
Yeah.
forget. Linda probably. I'm sure Linda's already put that up there and told everybody. But if Linda, if you would remind me, or Jan, if you'd remind me, I'll make an announcement on that as well. And also I wanted to mention too that the fundraiser is still going on and it's doing well, so that's been fun. Talking with those folks over there at Maritime Tartan, and what they're doing to raise money and giving away those hats. And as a reminder, we're going to be giving away the hats. The one hat they're going to be giving away, we're going to be doing that on the show here on November 15th. So he's going to draw out of he's got a whole like a bucket full of all the entries, and he's going to be pulling that one of them out, and somebody will be winning a hat with all the signatures of just about everybody on the island on it. So that thing is going to be a prized possession for sure. One of those hats, you don't go wear it. You put it up on the shelf behind you. So, yeah, one of those type for sure. Okay, so Linda says top 10 top 10 Templar finds is this coming Tuesday.
Yeah.
Top 10 Templar finds. That's this coming Tuesday. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
I enjoyed those shows, and I picked up little things from there. I did not realize that they only got to work with Fred for a year before he died.
Yeah.
And
I didn't.
That was a shame because I think of him like I do of Dan Hensky, the walking encyclopedia of Oak Island.
I know. If only they would have had more time with them guys for sure, because that's, well, at least they had Dan for several years.
Yeah, Dan for several years. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, unfortunately, Fred, but at least they did, connect them together and all start working together, at least at the end there. That was kind of cool. And then, of course, Tom being part of it. And Tom is kind of, he's invested in what's happening as well. So that's really cool. So
Tom Burns, welcome today.
Oh, is Tom here with us? Tom, yep, there's Tom. Yep. Thank you, Tom, for coming by. The next one in 2 weeks. Let's see. Next Tuesday was the top 10 Templar finds. The one after that is top 10 signs of buried treasure. Top 10 signs of buried treasure. That's the two drilling downs coming up over the course of the next 2 Tuesdays in a row. So, and I'm so glad they're giving us something, aren't you? I mean,
we have to get our fix in. We've called all summer.
I know. We need to get our fix in. I'm sure. Just even that's why I like doing these. That's kind of one of the reasons I thought, well, if we do the recaps of season 8, if we kind of revisit season 8, that'll kind of like feed that need I have to get some Oak Island going. Anyway, so that's definitely coming up. Barbara's here with us. Hi, Barbara. Fellow bacon bits. Yeah, bacon bits. Acorns with bacon bits.
Acorns and bacon bits.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So let's jump into it. Let me get some pictures going here. All right. And I always going to, so I grabbed I've got a new green screen picture behind me here. I've been using the one of the kind of looking down from the east across the west of Oak Island from east to west. And this one I decided because I got the swamp right here, got the swamp, and then I'm kind of covering up. Whoops, the other way. There's the money pit back there and Isaac's Point and Smith's Cove. So yeah, I'm going to change them up from time to time. Just grab some different pictures there. They're fun to mess with. All right, so let's jump into it. So we start off, of course, with that nice aerial shot of Oak Island. And then this particular episode, 15, starts off, Cask and You Shall Receive. And again, they jump right into the swamp area immediately. And you can see the large excavator is in there working. And again, these swamp pictures, quite honestly, they're probably from all over the time frame. You see them in different spots, not necessarily relating to where they are on the show. So that jumps around quite a bit. So, but you grab these and you're like, well, it's not really. I didn't see that excavator work in this area during this particular episode, but whatever. So there you got Mr. Gerhardt running the excavator there. You got Rick down in a whole shovel. No big surprise there. Rick working a shovel. Billy. You got Craig Tester running a shovel actually too. That's kind of cool. You don't usually see
Craig down there like that.
Yeah, he's down there digging. Everybody getting excited to do a little digging in the dirt. And they got Gary over there. Of course, Gary's doing his metal detecting and working his way along. And that's really neat to see too. Alessandra, how you doing, Alessandra? Oh, really? Sunny Nova Scotia. Sweet.
Nice.
Glad you're here today. Glad you're here with us.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. All right. So, but then you got, there's Gary. And Gary finds an ox shoe nail, which is really cool. Yeah, he's found a lot of them. We know that over the course of the season, he's found quite a few ox shoe nails. But The reason it's kind of cool is because we know that that ox shoe nail definitely means that there was oxen working along that roadway. They're uncovering that as they go, and that just shows you absolute proof that oxen were working that roadway. They were pulling carts along there. Why else would you have an oxen coming along the edge of the swamp right there? You're not. That's not an area that's going to be farmed. So you're not going to be plowing or anything down there along the edge of the swamp. So if it's found along the roadway, the stones, they keep calling them the cobblestones, then that's going to be indicated that oxen were pulling some sort of a cart or something along that.
And they would lose a lot of those because it was so uneven too.
Oh, absolutely. Going through the rocks and all that and walking over those rocks. Yeah, it's going to tear those the ox shoes up pretty bad. So, and throw the nails for sure. So that was pretty cool. And then you've got Miriam and Dr. Taylor over there working, making their way along, looking at the edge of the road. They're actually digging down on the side of it to look to see what's underneath the stones there, because you can see the stone right here. It looks like a stone right there in front of her. And she's digging along to get a look at what's under it for that cribbing and whatnot, for the sticks and stuff that's underneath for the cribbing. And she comes across another piece of coal. As we know, during this time that they're working the roadway, they did come across several pieces of coal during this time, and this just happens to be one of them. But gave you an indication that they were obviously transporting one of the things that they were transporting along this pathway or roadway was coal, and would definitely fall out of the cart, bouncing and banging along the rocks, and coal would fall out. And they found several of them along the way. So that's a pretty good indication. Now, what would they be using the coal for? The pine tar kiln? Was it heading for the pine tar kiln? Was it heading for as we get later in the show or in the season, they got up in that area where they find all that pottery and stuff. Is it possible that they were using it for heating during the winter, colder months? Or was it for blacksmithing, that they had to do some blacksmithing? As many ox shoes as they've lost over the course of this.
Give me $1 for every ox shoe that they lost. I think I'd be all right now.
Yeah. So they had to have a blacksmith shop going somewhere so they could get these things replaced. So so it could be used there too. So anyway, definitely have some coal being found. I think next we jump over to the money pit. Yep, there it is there. And the guys are obviously still punching holes up there to see if they can't find the actual location of the money pit. So they're punching holes up there. And I think this one they're working on C5, is it?
C5.
All right. And you got Stephen and Charles and Terry working.
That's only 5 to 6 feet from where C1 is right there.
Right, exactly. Here's C1 right here. And they're working. They think that the money pit might be over here at one time. And this is what I was talking about last Wednesday evening. We were talking about the fact that it could very well be that they were looking over on the east side of the Tupper shaft. And as you remember, they were punching holes to see the orientation and exactly was this indeed the Tupper shaft. And they were very confident that they had found it and that it was right here. Just north of the Heddon shaft. And they knew the Tupper shaft was about 10 feet off of the money pit, the actual real location of the money pit. Now they're thinking that they've pretty much exhausted, but they found this other map. And I showed this last Wednesday. They found this other map in our Doug.
In Dan's files.
Right, down in Dan's files in the basement. He found this, not this map, that one. He found this map right here. Now, making the fact that this is north up here, going up top, and that you've got this A right here being the Tupper shaft, and this over here being the money pit. Okay, so the money pit is off on the west side of the Tupper shaft, not on the east side. They were over here looking over here, when in fact it's probably over here. So that's why they're looking now in this side over here and punching holes to find out if that's where it is. So, And that's where he's pointing here. The fact there's C1 right there. And then here is their figuring this is and this is where they're punching the holes. There's C5 right there, C6 and C 4.5 would be right about, I think they're actually moving over here with 4.5 would be right about here, right on the edge of this. So they're making their way west to see what they can find. Going further and further. So there's C1, here's C5. So they're making their way over here to see if the money pit is probably over this way. Next, before we get back to the money pit, then they jump over to lot number 10. And in lot 10, they got Gary and Marty heading over. And they're taking a look at one of the point places that had been brought to them by Corian Mole and Christopher Morford. Now, these two gentlemen had told them that there was a significant that they should look in this particular spot for something, anything might be over here. So this is why they headed that way. Barbara Duncan is asking, C1 and C5 were all filled with seawater. Yes, C1 was for sure. C5 was yes, and it was too. C5 was actually a small, one of their small, 4-inch or 6-inch pipe drill well that they're putting. I'm going to call it a well because that's what this drill rig does, is put wells in the ground. So I'm going to call it a well, but it's like that 4-inch or the regular well machine size pipe that they're putting down for C5. C1 was actually one of the caissons that they put down, and that one definitely is filled with water down there. Yeah, because they sent a diver down. If you remember early in the season, right at the beginning of the season, they sent a diver down C1 to find the shiny gold thing on the wall, and he picked it out with his trowel, and it fell. Yeah, it fell to the bottom. C1 was originally a 4-inch well that they had put down back in like season 1 or 2 or 3, I don't know, way early. And then they put that camera, and it was kind of it was like a sewer camera,
right? And they found like a bar down there and other things down there.
Well, that's where they found the shiny gold object,
right?
And it was glittering on the side wall of the shaft below the pipe. They could see something glittering down there, the shiny gold thing. At the beginning of season 8, they sent the diver down, and the diver was down there, and it wasn't John Chatterton or Mike Huntley. It was a young guy, another team that was down there, and he ended up going on there and trying to pick this out of the wall, and it fell to the bottom. He wasn't able to stop it. So that's it. Yeah, that's definitely, and both of them would be filled because they did. You see when they're punching these 4-inch holes, how they're coming up with a lot of water when they get down to those depths. So yeah, I would say seawater. Yes. All right. So you got Marty and Gary heading over here, and where they're going is right here to the Cone E, which is the very bottom of Nolan's Cross, this boulder right here. So they're heading over here to Cone E to have a look. And that's it right there. Look at the size of that thing. That's why I grabbed this particular picture, because of the fact that Gary's down there in the hole. As people have been digging around it, you can see that all this area here has been dug up. And I wanted to grab this picture because there's Gary's walking.
As tall as Gary.
Huh?
It's as tall as Gary.
It is as tall as he is. Right. So that's a huge, huge stone.
Just to move that thing.
Exactly. That's a very good point, Jack. I mean, just to get that thing where, and then we talked about this, over the course of the show, I've been talking about the fact that, this Nolan's Cross had to be put there for a purpose.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to go through the amount of work it would take to move these giant stone boulders, into place.
I mean, how many oxen are we talking to move that thing?
Who knows? I can't even. I mean, that's a good question for Carmen Legg. Carmen Legg might probably have a good answer to that one. How many oxen would it take, Carmen? If you're out there, or if you check the show, let us know how many oxen do you think it would take to move one of those boulders.
I would say 4, but that's just a pure guess. But
And are you dragging it on the ground, or are you trying to get it onto some sort of a sled and pull the sled? I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what that thing would weigh. A couple ton?
couldn't be a cart for
10
sure.
ton boulder? I don't know. So, let's see. So anyway, look at it. I mean, it's just massive. And as I was saying before about the whole thing with the Nolan's Cross, was the fact that it had to be there for a purpose. Nobody's going to go through the amount of work and effort it would take to move these boulders into place just for the fun of it. That's not going to happen. So there has to be more to the story of these boulders and the creation of Nolan's Cross. There has to be. The Jersey lady's here with us. Hey, Jersey lady. Ah, okay. Gloria. Oh, Gloria from Facebook. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, Tom Burns says, my guess they were moved on skids in the winter. That's a very good point, Tom.
You could get them on ice and get it to move better.
You would have to. I mean, you're not going to drag that big boulder, throw ropes around it and just drag it. It had to be somehow or another rolled onto a skid of some sort and then skidded along into place. And the wintertime would be a great time to do that with the ground being frozen. Certainly would get along a lot easier. But again, would you go to all that effort just to say, oh, cool, that was cool, we made a cross, now what are we going to do? I think not. So they did come across quite a few ox shoe nails, which kind of goes along with what Jack just said about a lot of oxen being used to move it into place. Now, if the oxen are really straining and digging and really working hard, that's when you're going to be more apt to throw a shoe and have these nails. Unless this was some sort of, they only showed us like 1 or 2 on the show. But if you heard them talking about it, they mentioned that they had found quite a few in this area. Okay, so either they were forging them over here, which is unlikely, or these oxen that were doing this work to put this stone into place was really working hard. I mean, if it was farmland and it was just they were farming, they're not going to be concentrated. At least I don't think so. Would all be concentrated in one area like that. So interesting. But anyway, so they did find quite a few. Let's see. Barbara says, not to mention less vegetation to get in the way and better sight visibility. Mm-hmm. So yeah, quite a few little ox nails were found in that area, but that was really all they found. They didn't really come across anything else. At least
what they never said, Jeff. I'd like to have seen them gone up. Go right up the cross to see how many more nails they actually came up with.
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting.
Because those are just huge.
Mm-hmm. That nail, if that's an ox shoe nail, that's actually a big one right there. Generally, ox shoe nails aren't that big, especially after they've been nailed into the ox's hoof. Then they actually bend over and cut it off. So they may start off being this long, but by the time they're actually in the shoe into the hoof, they cut them off, and they're not generally this long. I was really surprised by the length of this thing. It would generally only be about half this long once it's put into it, unless it's a really big oxen. Once they're put into place, they're generally not that big, and they're usually hooked at the end because they round them over so they don't pull back out very easily. When it enters when it comes out of the top of the hoof, they kind of round it over and snip it off. So next we jump over to the money pit. And again, we got Scott and Charles and Terry and Rick and Doug, the whole crew over here. And they are looking they're working on that C5, borehole C5 still. And they did pull up a core sample of wood around 77.5 feet. Rick and Doug show up, and they head over to get a look at it. And here is this really old wood that they came across. I'm going to read here for a second from the synopsis. It says, Scott states that they are not sure if the wood is from the money pit or a tunnel because they came down on it at an angle. Now, remember how that that those drills walk as they make their way along. They walk over, and it might end up being 8 feet from where they started above. It might have walked over 8 feet by the time it gets to the bottom of the hole. And because of that walking, they figure they came down on this at an angle and cut off some of the wood, but they had a lot of, and the wood is real old and crumbly. It just kind of fell apart. That would be a really good indication of its age right there as well.
I was surprised they didn't do the bucket test almost with that too.
Well, yeah, they're you're right. And well, at least they didn't show us, but you're right. They, that one piece that, he ends up breaking, I think it might be the next picture right there. Yeah. He ends up just snapping it in half. And that's really, really old wood. If he's able to take that chunk, it's a circle, and just break it right apart.
In half. Yeah.
I mean, that's really old and rotted. So that one, they're thinking they're following a tunnel is what they were saying. They believe at this point they're following a tunnel that's heading west from the Tupper shaft. And the Tupper shaft was straight up and down. It wasn't a tunnel. So that's what they think they're following here, is they're following the pieces of a tunnel. Next, a core sample comes out. The team hopes to find something more interesting. Rick says that they will take the borehole down to 118 feet. And then when they get down there, and they're hoping to find the debris field from shaft 6. Now, if you remember when shaft 6 was put in, that's when they heard all that noise and everything, and they felt that the actual money pit had collapsed. All the walls and the wood from the money pit had collapsed down into the chamber that was down below and created a debris field down there. That's what they were concerned about at that time. So it very well could have been the case. So they were showing all this to Rick, and Rick says he wants to keep on going down, get down to 118 feet and look for that debris field. So that was the key there. And as right that this was kind of, here's your curse of Oak Island, the curse, popping up on you right here, is that, Rick was like, okay, let's go down and get down there a little bit deeper, because we want to see what else we can find in this particular hole. They were very excited about it. And then they blow a hydraulic line on the drill rig, and it just starts, squirting out hydraulic fluid. And I had to show this picture here. Look at the look on Rick's face. Look at his frown. He's just like, can you imagine the words he's thinking to himself right now? Yeah, they're this close, they think, to finding something pretty extraordinary deeper in the hole.
And how many times has that happened to him?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially the money pit.
Yeah, the backhoe over in when Corey and Mole and Christopher Morford told him take a look over in lot.
The sinkholes that Vanessa got into.
Yeah.
In the money pit.
Yep. How many times have they had equipment breakdown right in the middle of hopefully finding something? Yeah, very important. Yeah, who said that? Jan said the Oak Island Gremlins strike again. Hey, Janet. Hi, Janet. Hi. She said, "Oh, I'm late." Oh, right. What? New baby granddaughter due any minute? Is that what you were saying there?
It looks like it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I know I have a, what would she be? I guess until they're 2 years old, you still call them by the months, right? So my granddaughter is what? She'd be 20 months now, 21 months. Just a cutie pie. Grandkids are so awesome.
Because you can always get back to her parents.
Yeah. So anyway, the look on his face was just crazy right there. Look at him. He's just like, wah, wah, yeah. So here we go back to the money pit. And you know what? Now that we're at the money pit, I'm gonna, I'd like to get the opinions of somebody that was actually there. And we have joining us right now, Dr. Aaron Taylor. Taylor, how you doing? That was
actually
there. And we have joining us right now. You're gonna have to turn that down just a little bit.
I think I'm a little
how you doing?
delayed.
Hello. Yeah, it is. And we have joining us right now. You're gonna have to turn that down just a little bit.
I think I'm a little
how you doing?
delayed.
Hello. Yeah. Nope. Oh, he lost him. He clicked out for a second. All right. Well, he'll be back. He'll be right back. Yeah, Dr. Aaron Taylor's with us. He's going to join us, and I'm going to get some of his opinion as we go along here. as we go along to talk about this, because he was there. He was looking at this stuff and seeing it for himself. All right, so he'll get that worked out. Maybe he'll
Jump
put
back
some
in.
headphones or something. He'll jump back in here with us in a minute. Oh, there he is. Let's see if we can do this now.
All right. Can you hear
There we
me?
go. Yeah, now we can hear you.
Wow.
That's better.
Hey, gentlemen, nice to see you.
Nice to
How are
see
you
you.
doing? Where are you at? Are you in Nova Scotia right now?
I am in Nova Scotia. It's a gorgeous day. It's Thanksgiving weekend in Canada, so
Yep.
enjoying a nice long weekend.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to say happy Thanksgiving to all of our Canadian friends up there for sure. Yeah, that's just is that Sunday? It's actually on Sunday for you?
Yeah, we have the Monday off.
Mhm.
Those of us lucky, not everyone does. I know last year we didn't have it off. There's, last month of filming, so it's crunch time. So I'm sure everyone's going flat out now and tired and running on fumes. But
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for coming by today. I really appreciate you joining us because I tell you what, there's quite a bit of this. You guys, you and Miriam spent so much time working this road last year or last season in the swamp, and having your insights on this, it would just be phenomenal. I can't thank you enough for coming in and joining us. This particular spot that we're at right now is when they were finding the pieces of the keg top and bottom. Do you remember that happening?
yeah, yes. So I know a lot of people get frustrated with the amount of wood we find. I
Yeah.
get a lot of those comments, but I can't stress enough the importance of finding this wood because it's something that we can actually carbon date.
Yep.
You can't date you can't radiocarbon date the stones. You can't do it to metal, but you can do it to things that were living. And so finding this stuff, although it might seem mundane to a lot of people, this is what really helps us put dates on the road. And also, when you get stuff like this from a cask, then you bring in important people like Carmen Legg, who then put it into context. So, archaeologists, we love the wood.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, because you can definitely carbon date it and get something. And I think that they had even mentioned, and they did take this over. There's another piece sticking out. They actually, well, they showed us that they found two pieces that didn't go together. So they were thinking maybe it was a top and a bottom piece, one of each, from a barrel. And
Yeah.
there's a shot of a barrel here. They showed this on the show to give you an idea. So it would be these pieces of wood that are right here making the top and the bottom. And they're usually two pieces together, two halves going together to make them like that, that would be fitted in there just right. And then, of course, when you put the liquid in, they swell. When they swell, they seal it up so that nothing comes out. That's how those work. So, and here's another piece, and I think this might even be you standing there whole. I don't know. I know you were involved in looking at these.
Yeah, looks like my grubby hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you ever able to determine, or did they float in, or did you have any notion of were they there all the time, or were they floated in? Could you ever determine that?
No, I mean that's a great question. That's something that we struggle with. Did it float in? When did it float in? It could have floated in, hundreds of years ago. It could be from something else, completely unrelated to the island and just floated in. We know things can travel great distances. So that's when we give dates on things. And it's always with the caveat that it suggests, it's possibly, because that's a great question. When you find it deep down into the muck, and that's where Dr. Spooner comes in, we can sort of have an understanding of how long it takes to get to that depth of sediment on top of something like this. So we can sort of guesstimate that, if it's under a meter worth of muck, that it probably takes 300 years. I'm throwing a number out. I'm not exactly sure. It probably takes 300 years for that amount of muck to accumulate. So depending where we find it, gives us a lot of information. And that's why archaeologists, we're so slow and methodical, because it's not just what we find, it's where and at what depth we find things.
Right.
So, I mean, Billy Gerhardt is awesome, and we couldn't have done the work without him. But there's sort of a tension between the two of us where he, wants to go big. And, Miriam and I are always going, just not quite that big. So it was great, but he was wonderful to work with, and he was understanding and understood why we needed to go slow. So but yeah, the depth and where we found it can give us some more information as well.
Yeah, I know somebody had said something about on the show, had called it Billy's Trowel, because
Yeah.
that was awesome. I was laughing when I heard that. We did have a question. Tom Burns asked the question. He says, how many times do you think that the stone road was resurfaced or added onto or cleaned up or whatever? Is it?
Yeah, so that was a really good question that we had, that we tried to answer, and you could definitely see that there was at least two remodeling of it, of the road. It had sunk in the middle and sort of what we call it a sway back. And so then to level off the sway, they had put smaller rocks in, cobblestones, to build it back up. And Miriam and I actually did a cross section of the road, and you can see that. So it had at least two different times it was used. And it was probably used originally based on the stakes that we found, survey markers, I'd like to call them, that come in, I believe, around 1680 to 1720-ish. And then we're finding ceramics on it that date to the late 1700s, early 1800s. So it was probably used at least twice. For what purposes? Again, it's another great question. Right. None of us believed it was used for farming. No. It didn't have fishing. It wouldn't have been used by fishermen.
No.
So, it's something that is not, that we didn't solve at the end of last season, but it was something significant. And the other thing, and I think I've discussed this before, is where's the paper trail? The French and the British, if they built an outhouse, you're finding paperwork. They love the paperwork. There's nothing that we have found yet that speaks of the building of this road. And talking to Billy Gerhardt, has built roads, and he said this would have taken a lot of manpower, a lot of man hours. This was not something you would have cobbled together overnight. And where's the paperwork? Right. So, it's so intriguing.
Well, I know that's something that John Edwards and I, when we were doing our IDK shows, we were talking about that. We had briefly discussed that if the British or the French were out there and they were doing this stuff, there has to be, like you just said, we mentioned that there had to be some written record someplace. They're not going to take on an enterprise of setting something up on an island or anywhere over there without having some documentation to it, what they were doing there. And not having that leaves us wondering. We know that they were there. I mean, it's very clear that the French were there. It's very clear that the British were there. But where's the documentation of what they were doing there and why were they there? I mean, was it a staging point? Were they using it for ship repairs or whatever? There has to be a paper trail somewhere, like you just said. And if they were involved in building a road, if that would have been them that built this road, then there would, you just said, there have to be a paper trail somewhere.
Yeah. Without the paper trail, they don't get paid.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go. Yeah.
So they need the paper trail unless it's for reasons, that they don't want people to know that something is being built there.
Yes.
That's what I just keep, it just keeps coming back to me. And I always try, and usually the simplest answer is the correct answer.
Yep.
But there's nothing simple about this. And that's why I could have spent a career on that road.
Mhm.
It's fascinating.
Well, you,
And
not only that, but you also mentioned, I think it was you and Miriam were talking about the lack of stuff on the road. You were, if you find an area, and you did finally, you got up by the back of Tom, the Nolan property. That, well, it's all their property, but I mean right up by where the house was.
right.
You were finding lots of pottery, but before then, you weren't really finding anything along that road. The lack of artifacts tells a story, does it not?
Absolutely. I mean, if you work on any site I've worked on, and I've worked on hundreds of them, you find an endless amount of smoking pipe, pieces of smoking pipes, because you're smoking and you're tossing it. You're finding broken drinking vessels. You're finding eating vessels. You're finding tons of it. And the stuff that we found at the end, where the road turned up, we were finding all that stuff. None of it dates back prior to, I believe, late 1750s, early 1760s. So the people who originally built that road were not finding anything except the wooden stakes.
Right,
So it is almost like we found one tiny little piece of coal halfway through that Miriam found.
right,
We did find bags of it at the very beginning of the road,
right.
that Dr. Spooner had us collect for him, but nothing else.
Hmm.
Where are the smoking pipes? Where are the broken drinking cups?
Mhm.
We're not finding any, and I've never experienced that before.
Yeah, that's really remarkable. As if they were trying to hide the fact that they were there.
Yeah,
Now, when
you can
you
just see them picking up as they go along, and leave nothing there.
Yep.
now when you were looking at the road and you came across the repairs and things like that, was there any difference, I want to say, between the two layers? I could tell you if one was French or one was British or anything like that.
No, we were hoping for a smoking gun, like a piece of French ceramic below the British ceramic, and that would have been a dream come true.
Yep.
We never found that, so you really can't say. There wasn't really a French style of road building as compared to a British. I mean, we know Roman roads, but
Mhm.
this was just a purposeful road put through a swamp for some reason, and we haven't as yet been able to put a country to it.
Yep. Hmm. Dean Barker asked the question, and this is something that I was wondering about too. As you see in the picture here, and Dean, I'm going to get to your question as we move right into this next section. That they went over to the Northville farm to go see Carmen Legg and show him these barrel top and bottom. And so they got Doug and Scott Barlow heading over there to show him, and of course he was looking at it and said, "Yep, it's definitely a barrel head." And also that he figured it was could be far back as to the 1400s. And then also that it was predates the making of the barrel making in Nova Scotia. Now, the question that Dean has is one that I have as well, wanting to ask. They talked about a substance on these. Was it ever tested to find out if there was such substance found as what might have been in the barrels?
I don't know. I know that the wood was being sent to get radiocarbon dated
Mhm.
and to be tested for any remnants on it.
Mhm.
I'm not on the show this coming season, so I don't have access to those results.
Okay. All right.
So maybe they're going to
Maybe.
be given in the upcoming season. That would be great.
I hope
You
so.
can get lots of information on that stuff.
Yes, and that
Um,
would be information that we definitely wanna know. Now, one of them, I said I think if I remember correctly on the show, they were talking about the fact that one was like dry goods and the other one was probably wet goods. That one, the wet goods, I would think would be the one you'd get some sort of a substance. I don't know about the dry, but yeah, for sure. If that's something that they found out, we all want to know. I want to know. I think it's absolutely fascinating to
yeah,
find
me
out what
too.
these barrels would have held. Yeah. Then
Absolutely.
we also had, let's see. Oh yeah, Jenny said, going back about the lack of stuff, I think, said makes one think it was either a top secret mission or something going on rather than being military with the lack of artifacts and the fact that they were kind of cleaning up behind themselves. Yeah, hard to say. Let's see. Okay, we got a few people logging in here. Yeah, say they told us that there was no. Oh, who was this? Oh, it's Linda said they told us that there were no First Nation evidence found on the island at all. Oh, okay. She was talking about the First Nation artifacts. They weren't. Yeah, you guys weren't finding any First Nation artifacts on the island at all from the Mi'kmaq or anything. I don't think were they.
To the best of my knowledge, no. We know that they were all over.
Yeah.
But I mean, I spent most of my time on the Stone Road, which is clearly not First Nations. So I don't know.
Let's see. Somebody
When
else
you
said,
started the Stone Road, and as you went along during the season, how shocked were you at how long it went and how complex it was? I mean, it just seemed to go forever.
Hey, I was shocked when we first encountered it. I remember watching Rick and Ian Spooner. It was the hottest day of the year. And Ian Spooner, Dr. Spooner's in the swamp in this little rubber dinghy with Rick, and he's using this
yeah.
pole.
Oh,
And I'm going, what the heck are they doing? And then they said, oh, Aaron, I think we might have found something. Would you be interested in excavating it? And I'm excavating a swamp. What could be in the swamp? I said, hey, I'm game. So we started. So I was shocked every inch along that road until we got right to the end. So, and that's what was so exciting about it, because
Mhm.
no one has seen something like this. And every day I'd say to Miriam, what are we going to find today?
Yeah.
And, every day was so, it's smelly, and like you get a good idea of the swamp, what it looks like and how, but you don't really, the smell of it doesn't really come across on the TV cameras. And it was stinky, and there were bugs, and it was as disgusting and mucky as you can imagine. But every morning I get up excited because what are we going to find? And Miriam, what a trooper.
Oh
Like,
man.
the two
she
of you
said,
really seem to work well together.
yeah, like I knew she was a student of mine on my Cuba field schools, and we just immediately hit it off. You meet someone and the banter is just natural.
Mhm.
And we were very lucky to get her to join us. And
Oh, absolutely.
it was a pleasure working with her. She's got a great future ahead of her, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I remember at the end of the year where you said something about usually they brought stuff over to you and you just looked at you like that's
Yep.
not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Miriam. And that's why I wanted her on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
I know I have another Facebook user here. I'm trying to figure out exactly who said this. I don't have a name on this side, but it said the French and English kept meticulous records. I mean, the roads should be in the Ludenberg records somewhere. The McGinnis, Vaughan, and Smith's last will and testament records are all there. So why not something about this road? So yeah, it's really if the record, there's no record anywhere to be found that somebody took all this time and effort to build this road. It had to be done because they didn't want anybody to know, or it was done by a group that we don't know about the group that did it, and we don't know about the records. Therefore, we don't know where the records are to talk about this.
I mean, Doug is like a dog with looking for a bone. Like if it's there, he's going to find it.
Yep.
Like he will spend all day after day after day looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't come up with it yet. So it doesn't mean it's not there. It
Right.
could be there,
Right.
but finding records for anything else is as she says there, it's not that hard to find.
Right. It shouldn't be anyway. Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. So as we'll kind of push along here a little bit because we'll be getting back to the swamp and you here in just a second for sure on the next episode. Obviously, here's that picture of everybody, and including yourself, in the war room taking a look. You see all these chunks of coal, and there's some big pieces here. Now, as I think you just mentioned, that most of these bigger pieces were found on that initial 20-foot wide, 70-foot long section of road right there in the corner of the swamp.
That's right.
Is that yeah, okay. And this would be an indication if you're finding it here that chances are it was because they were being loaded off from a boat that was brought in and tied off to a dock right there,
Mhm.
and then loaded onto carts where the spillage would happen, right? Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah, that's what we concluded.
right.
Yes. And so what Dr. Spooner is doing is he's going to have it sent away, and
Mhm.
hopefully it will be in the upcoming season, where you can't date it. It's 150 million years
Yeah,
old. That's
exactly.
the date you're going to get back on it. But
Yeah.
you can, based on the content of sulfur in that,
Mhm,
you can determine from where it came.
mhm.
Was it Spanish coal? Was it French coal? So these different areas had that signature, that sulfur signature,
Yep.
and so hopefully we'll be able to tell where that came from.
Mhm.
And then, if we can say that's from Spain, um, it doesn't mean the hunters were Spanish,
Right.
but it suggests that. And so, people say follow the money. Well,
Mhm.
follow the coal,
Yep.
and it could end up answering a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So I hope they talk about that in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I do too. And they also mentioned something about pollen, finding pollen and stuff within it, and they could test the pollen and find out where the pollen was indigenous from, the whatever plant the pollen was from, and then being able this one here, they kind of speculated that because of the low sulfur content that it came from Eastern Europe. But again, that was something that, I don't think they didn't do the pollen test. And he said, I think that was he saying that
It would be months before they would get a
yeah,
result
yeah,
back.
yeah, he would get it would be months. And so we like you just said, Aaron, is that we may not hear about it until sometime in season 9, which I hope we do. I hope we get an answer on that because again, and like you said, you can't make a determination from that if as to who it was, but it'll give you a better idea.
Yeah.
Because if these areas are the areas where coal is coming from over there, then who's buying it? They're
Yeah.
people are
And
buying it.
and that will have a paper trail.
And that you're right. That'll
Right.
have a paper trail.
Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, yeah, that just wraps up the meeting there in the war room. And then we jump over to episode number 16. And this is the one where I think is really interesting about what with you in it. Of course, it jumps off right off the beginning again, working. And there you can see that 20-foot wide, 70-foot long section of the road. And again, there had to be some sort of a war for something along here. They did, and again, this is something that I've been griping about. Jack is always griping about the fact that they found some wood anomaly over in the swamp over this way, right at the end of the season. And Billy Gerhardt took a piece of the wood and he put it in his pocket, saying it was a top pocket find. It was like a ship's railing or something.
Yes, I
Um,
remember that. Yeah.
and then they found like a log or a beam or something down there, and then boop, the season was over. So we wanted to see more of that. But over here on the very underneath, right next to that pine tree, in this right in the corner, right over here in the corner, was
Yeah.
that wood anomaly that was uncovered. And initially, I think this was the wood anomaly that Fred Nolan, when he drained the swamp back when he was working with Dan, had said, "Hey, did you see that?" Because Dan told him to let it fill back in with water. Don't quit pumping it out. Let it fill back in with water. He wasn't concerned about the swamp. He said, "Did you?" He was telling Dan, "Did you see that tunnel, tunnel entrance over there in the corner?" Well, they never went after it. I'm assuming that's what he was talking about. Was it? I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this or not, but was that just maybe like a part of a wharf then, or a dock of some sort? Do you think?
Uh, if we're talking about the same thing, I believe it was a smaller slipway.
Okay,
It wasn't a. There was no tunnel found on when I was
right,
working there.
right.
There was remnants of a smaller slipway,
Mhm.
in which some wood was collected and sent away. So I'm not aware of that. I know
Okay.
we talked about heading in that direction in the upcoming season.
Mhm.
That was going to be an area they targeted, but I don't know if they did or not. Yeah, I'm not privy to that information.
I see that hole in there. You had talked about where you guys took a cross section at you and Miriam. Is
Yeah,
that hole that's there in the middle?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, that was
So that
interesting. Go ahead.
gave us an idea of how they made it, and
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Look right down through the center of it was make sense to do it that way. And you talked about cribbing underneath. So there was like a layer of cribbing and
Yeah.
then the rocks to keep the rocks from sinking down into the muck. Is that the idea behind it?
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, with the weight of it, it did end up doing the saddle back, and then they had to fix it.
So that's why you see the smaller stones, right? Like
That's
in the
right.
middle of it. Okay. All right. I
That's right.
wondered about that because you got the bigger ones on both ends and then the smaller ones in the center. And I never knew why that was the case. I thought, well, maybe they all had the smaller ones on top to smooth it out, but
Yeah.
then maybe they washed away. I don't know. I was kind of always wondering why that section had smaller ones right in the middle of it like that. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. To level it off.
How much of a problem during the year, and I think it was a dry year up there, did you have them have pump out and how long, or were you delayed at all because of that?
Scott Barlow deserves a gold medal because he kept the pumps running constantly, and that was a pain in the butt. And so we had to keep the pumps running, and we pumped all the water. We didn't pump it into the ocean. You pumped it into a sort of a reservoir area because it all had to be returned as part of the environmental impact assessment and regulations. So it had to be constantly pumped, and it was a thorn in Scott's side, and he did an incredible job on that.
Oh, yeah, what a job to have too. Yeah, you can see that they were pumping it. I remember that had they had the hoses going all along the road, the road right here, and then running back into the woods and they had to find a spot where they could pump it into, and then
Yeah,
I didn't know they had to put it back. Oh my goodness, that would
yeah,
be painstaking for sure. When you guys went across here on the road, and I know you and I, the last time you were on the show and we got a chance to talk, you thought at some point they were going to take a look at going to the right.
hmm
Obviously, you guys went to the left and followed your way all the way up to at this point in the show. You're basically just on the other side of Nolan's Peninsula,
that's
working
right.
this area right over here. And they show that like the aerial shot, and you see you see so many stones. You see a lot of them because you
hmm
completely cleared all that off. As
hmm
part of that would be, I can't imagine having to trowel all that mud out of there. But as it goes along here, we just see sporadic rocks. You didn't take the time to meticulously clean all that, I'm assuming, right? You just following the trail.
We were following it. I mean, I would have loved to spend, like I said, I could have spent the next 20 years of my career on that road. But what Miriam and I did was we every so often we do a little cross section,
Mhm.
and we clear off a 1 meter by 1 meter to
Okay.
make sure that that still is the road.
Okay.
And then also we'd follow along, and we would find those survey stakes
Yes, I remember that.
um,
Yeah.
on the swamp boundary. So we were following the stakes, and as long as we were finding these stakes, we knew that we were on the road. But no time, we were running out of time.
Yeah.
So it was a trade-off between speed and being meticulous, and so
Yep.
that's why it doesn't look as nice as the big stone road.
That's what I
Um,
assumed. Yep.
but it was definitely a road.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I assumed too, because you had to move along. You didn't have time to really clean it all off like that. And in doing so, you may have found more artifacts too, though. Who's to say?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now we did find that little piece of coal, and we found ox shoes and ox nails.
Mhm.
So we knew that it was being used as a road.
Yep.
I've heard some people wrote in thinking it was just the original paleo shoreline, the natural beach before it became a swamp. But the stones were intentionally placed, and it was staked off, and there's no reason a beach would look like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's some of the things that, unfortunately, we don't get the full picture watching it on the show. When that's, I am so glad you're here to explain that because you were there, you were doing the digging, you were finding the things that led you to believe, yes, this is a road.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing here is Marty came out. He must have been back home and came back out to the island. And Rick took him out to show him. And Marty is just, and I think even Marty had said during this scene right here, he's like, why didn't we see this before? Why, you know, we drained the swamp. Why didn't we see it? Well, because you hadn't cleared off. I don't know how much muck was on top of the road.
Mhm.
I'm assuming it was probably at least a foot thick on top, something like that, maybe.
Probably 2 feet.
Oh
We
my
got
god.
Billy pulled a lot of that back so that we would be able to trowel it.
Yep.
We'd still be there troweling if we didn't have Billy. So, um, yeah, and
And that's an art in itself, what Billy was doing.
Yeah.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah, that man is like a
absolutely.
yeah, he's phenomenal. You know, he's a phenom with that thing. The way he just makes it, you know, he just curl. I mean, I know the guys that use these things all the time and get very good, but he is very good with it. I mean, he can just pull it right along and just
It,
scrape and
it's
skim it off.
it's like an art form.
Yeah.
You say, Billy, can you take it down 1 inch, and he'll take it down 1 inch. You
Oh my
know.
goodness. Yeah.
And he's got a great eye too. He's like, Aaron, I think I see something running along there. And I'll be down and with my trowel, I'll be like, geez, Billy, you're right. You know, he's got a good eye and he's talented. That's for sure. It was a pleasure working with Billy. And again, there was a tension. He had a job to do. I had a job to do. But we were both willing to give a little, and it ended up working well.
Yeah, a guy with an excavator just wants to dig. Let me just dig. And I know Rick has mentioned that before too on the show. We just want to just dig, but you can't. You need to. And again, I said this when you were on the show and we were, you know, had you on before, talking about the fact that you have to having the archaeologist on the island is so important because you want to document everything. You don't want to do a Dunfield and just dig giant holes without
Right.
documenting all the pieces and parts along the way, which is why you guys were brought out and give your
Mhm.
assessment, your professional opinions of to what you're finding and all that. So it is important, but yet sometimes you just want to dig that big hole, you know, like Dunfield did.
Yeah. But, you know, Billy got that. He got that we needed to record this
Yep.
and, you know, that we're getting information. And as long as he could see that we're getting information, he's like, there's no rush, you know,
Mhm.
when you need me. So he got it. You know, not everyone does. They're just like, well, I can figure this out for myself and, you know, scoop, scoop, scoop. But Billy wasn't like that.
Right.
You know, it was great working with him.
Yeah. And here I grabbed this picture here of going along because usually we here's you guys walking out. You're showing Rick and Marty. Marty's coming out there now. You're showing Marty along the roadway and giving your opinions of what you found.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And then as we get down toward the end where the excavator's working, here's Billy's actually out there cleaning mud. He's digging with a shovel or a hoe. He's got something going down there. You normally don't see him with a hard hat on. He's usually sitting in the machine. So I thought that was pretty funny. And I think that actually I think Marty climbed up in the machine and
Yeah.
was using the excavator while Billy was down in the hole with a shovel. I thought I got to
Yeah.
grab that picture because
Yeah.
you don't normally see that.
No, Marty's game for anything.
Oh yeah, for
Sure.
sure. And
Yeah.
I guess he's a pretty good you know, equipment operator himself. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
and of course they brought out Steven because they wanted to, as you guys were going along, and I'm assuming, you know, we got a couple glimpses of this, but I assume also that as you guys were working the road along, you were bringing him out quite frequently to give an elevation of it as it went. Is that true?
Absolutely. And I believe from the start of the road to the end of the road, it only varied by less than a foot, I believe,
Wow.
if I'm not correct. Like it was well made. And Steve, you know, is a surveyor and he says that is really good.
Yep.
He'd also ping in the finds that we had. And so at the end, he had generated a map showing where all the artifacts are.
Mhm.
And that was really helpful as well. So yeah, you know, he has the instruments and, you know, he definitely helps fill out the picture that we're trying to create. So
Right.
yeah, Steve was great to work with and really good with the equipment.
And
Yep.
then that get you to believe that there was a dump or something at the end of the road because of what he did or how much you found in that one area.
Yeah, so what we call those is middens. And so here's my thinking about it. Well, why is there a midden there?
Mhm.
So what you do is you'd have your house and you know, you'd take your garbage, broken whatever, food scraps, and you just throw them out behind your house.
Right.
And So I can just imagine, because there are people who had houses there in the 1820s and such, and even possibly even before that. And so they're coming down to the swamp to throw their stuff. And you got to remember, it's forested. But in this one area, it's not forested because there was a road there. So they're thinking, oh, this is a great spot to throw the waste. So we're finding waste that dates from the 1760s and going forward. And you're finding broken dishes, you're finding pipe stems, you're finding pane glass, from windows. So it sort of lends itself to being a dump heap. It wasn't somewhere that people picnicked and the odd dish was broken.
Right.
It was something that was dumped there, which suggests that there was an even earlier house than the Graves house. And that's what Rick and I were talking about.
Right.
It hasn't been located yet. And,
Really?
there's so much backhoe work done by Mr. Nolan. You don't know what was destroyed or what's been buried over. But I believe there was another house, some sort of house structure there. Why? Because you're finding pane glass in with these artifacts from the late 1750s, 60s, and 70s.
Wow. That's
So-
interesting.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, late in the year, you had your, what we call a sweet Jesus moment with the one
Sweet
piece
Jesus.
that was found.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to get a better look at it, to try to date it more or anything?
Yeah, I took it back. It ended up being a piece of yellowware, which is 1810. It was a little later than the creamware. That sweet Jesus moment came from being exhausted. I think that was one of the last days we were filming. I was dead on my feet. You get a little silly in the head. And everything we'd been finding was so broken and smashed. And you're getting these tiny little pieces. And to actually get in something that size, which can tell you what the vessel was, because
Right.
you've got the base of it.
Right.
It was exciting. Archaeologists were nerdy. We get excited by these things. So you add exhaustion to excited, and you get sweet Jesus.
Yeah.
And
It was a good piece, though. I mean, it was a neat piece.
it was great. And Rick found it, and he was beaming.
Yeah.
And, when Rick gets excited, everyone gets excited, And so here's Rick, he's exhausted too. And it's the second last day filming, I believe. And he brings this thing up to me, and he's got the grin the size of, you can't believe. And you just get caught up in it. And
Right.
and I just got excited. And that's
Yeah.
where Sweet Jesus came from. So
Yeah, that was funny. But yeah, it's so true. I mean, that was neat to find those things. And it, like you said, that it definitely indicated that there was some sort of at least to me anyway, it was some sort of a heap or there had to be a building nearby. I mean, you found the burn event over there
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
Which would indicate some sort of maybe it was I was speculating when I saw that during the show last season when we were talking about it, that it might have been, either it was a building used for a bunkhouse or a kitchen area. So that would have been a heating area. If it was a bunkhouse or a kitchen area, it would have been a place where they were cooking food. Hard to say. Plus all the pottery that was found, broken pieces of this and that and the other. I don't know. Hard to say, but it does seem like it would have been some sort of a building there or structure there or a home there or something. Like you had mentioned. Wow.
Yeah. I know that's one area I had wanted to target. I think, when we had to move from there because time was running out, and and there's a show being done, and I get that. It's not just, this isn't my gig. There's a show to be made, and we need to keep going. And I definitely plan to come back there because there are things that had been burned there that was so hot that it changed the soil underneath to red. And that's an intense fire. So what is going on in that? Was it some sort of a cellar feature? Was it? And then it was filled back in.
Yeah.
And it had lots of little pockets, and Rick put his arm into one of them. And
yeah, I remember that. Yep.
I remember that, yeah.
so we don't know what that is, and that's not on any maps. That's
They
not
said
part
that
of the
was a
grades.
garage, like, or a shed or something, if I remember correctly. They
I
thought.
was thinking of some sort of a cellar.
Yeah, I
But
remember that rock
again,
wall you found at one time. You found like a stack in like a little wall.
and actually Billy found that,
Oh, did he?
and he said, Aaron, I think there's something there. So Miriam and I rushed over with our trowels, and yep, there was a row of stones placed on intentionally on top of each other. And then it looked to be going back in a sort of a square rectangular shape. So usually when you find that, it's a cellar feature for a house.
Yep.
But then you've got this incredible amount of fire that had taken place there, not over 1 or 2 days, but
Right.
over several. This would have taken a long time to produce the redness in the soil. And we found that as well on the road. Dr. Spooner found some of that. Again, there's some burning event that was there over a long period of time. What that was,
Yeah.
maybe they figured it out this season. I don't know.
Yeah, or if they continued with it, but yeah, I wanted to bring up some more of these pictures. Now, this is still in the swamp area here. I jumped ahead a little bit,
Yeah.
Because I wanted to stay with things that you were involved with. And there's Rick. He's down there. He's doing his. I think he's actually got a trowel in his hands. He's doing a little bit of that work.
Yeah, he finally accepted the trowel, and we could hardly pry it out of his hand at the end of the season. So
Yeah. This is a picture that shows this was actually towards, I think this was even, and I mentioned this earlier, some of these pictures that we get, the aerial shots that they grab and pick and choose here, are not all from the same time period. Sometimes they shoot, and I think this was more, this had to be getting more toward the end here, because they were right up on the edge of Nolan's, where the house is and stuff, right on the edge of the property there where the house is. But this is where you found that piece of earthenware. I guess that's what you called it, earthenware.
Yeah, it's a piece of it's a ceramic. It's an early piece. The French would have used it. It would have gone that far back, and it's coarse. And there's something. I remember this is the piece that I put my tongue on.
Yeah, yeah. It was like you washed it off a little first, at least. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
And that's that I didn't do that for TV. That's what we do. That's what I show my students in the field. That's what was showed to me in the field, because it could be a coarse earthenware, it could be a refined earthenware, or it could be a stoneware. And when it's muddy and stuff like that, if you want to know out in the field, if it's a coarse earthenware or refined or stone, you put it to your tongue. And if it's a coarse earthenware, it's very porous, so it sticks to your tongue. Wow. And so when I did that, it stuck to my tongue. So I knew immediately, I don't know what exactly it is, but it is a coarse earthenware, and it's much earlier than the refined and the stoneware. Right. Because ceramics change as the kilns are able to be heated. Right. And the higher the temperature, the more refined. So this piece was made very early when they couldn't get the kilns very hot. So that was a very exciting piece. And that's what we do in the field is you stick your tongue on it. And
did you have maybe a guess at its date, its age?
I definitely believe it was prior to the British arriving. Wow. I believe it was from the French period, and I believe it was quite early. Wow. So possibly along with the stakes that we dated 1680, 1620, it probably was along that age range. So that was a very exciting piece to find.
I wonder, now this isn't something that they could do any kind of another dating wise, right? A piece of pottery is probably not something that they can analyze to get a date, other than, go ahead.
Well, you can try and figure out what it is, what vessel it's from. And we know when these things came into the record. So we know that earthenware came in early, coarse earthenware. And so we know when these things started being used. So it gives us that date range. So we know that was definitely prior to 1750, and probably a lot earlier than that.
Yep. Wow. That's something. And that and again, it's all those little pieces, and people are after during the section of the season, we're all like, oh, another piece of pottery, oh, another piece. But again, they all tell a story. You can kind of get an idea of what's happening by that. They are important.
Yeah. Oak Island, I like to tell people is imagine this, 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle,
Hmm.
and we're just putting piece by piece by piece. And, and those who understand that come along for the ride, and there's not going to be instant gratification.
Hmm.
I don't believe this is going to be solved with a eureka aha moment. I think it's going to be just grinding it out like they've been doing, like Gary's been doing, like everyone's been doing, and just piece by piece by piece until there's a picture that's going to form.
Right.
And it's I think it's like a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, and that little piece of ceramic adds one little piece to the puzzle. And
Exactly.
it's I mean, I know it's a long ride. This is 8 seasons now, 9 seasons, but
Mhm.
I mean, it's fascinating.
It
If
had to take place. It
Right.
had to in this way, because if you look at when they were versed there, if you take the time, and many of us have, because we're acorns, of course, we're nuts, and we go back and we watch them over and over again. But you go
Yeah.
back and you see how they started in season 1 and what they had to work with, and you make your way through the seasons and you see that, okay, were they going to be able to find, the money pit and find any kind of possible treasure or get an answer to all of this right off the bat? No, it was going to take like you just said, it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of finds to be able to come up with an answer.
Mhm.
And I've said this before, do we all want them to find, some great treasure or artifacts or something that, uh, the great menorah or something like that? Yeah, we'd love for that to happen, but to get answers as to all of this, and I think that it does lead to the fact that, um, you look at who's been here over the course of time, the answers here could very well change American history, as to what took place and who was here first. We all go by the story or the history books say that 1492 Columbus, found and discovered America. Well, we know that there was people here before him. Um,
Yeah.
but why and who, and getting those answers like Rick is always searching for, is what many of us want as well. So, would we
Yeah.
love
I
that
mean,
treasure? Yes, but we want answers to this.
and Rick said that, I don't know if it was every day, but at least every other day. I don't know if there's a treasure or not, but there's a hell of a good story.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's what keeps you going,
Hmm. Yep.
Aaron, how advantageous was it for you to have somebody like Marion that you had worked with before, that when going into something like this, to work all season with her like that?
Well, I'd done TV interviews like on the news and stuff like that, but I'd never been thrown into a situation like this.
Hmm.
And it's not, it's bizarre. Like suddenly you're doing your job, but there's 4 cameras on you all day long. There's producers standing around,
Hmm.
and you're supposed to do your job and speak and try and make sense and try and not sound stupid. And imagine going to your job, and the second you step on the property, there's a camera on you recording everything you say, everything you do. It's quite nerve-wracking. So to have someone like Miriam that I trusted, that we encouraged each other, um, it meant a great deal to me. I could relax. I was with someone I knew had my back,
Yep.
and um, and they were wonderful too. Like the camera people, the producers, they're like, Aaron, we're not going to make you look like an idiot. If you say something that's stupid, or you fall on your face or something, we're all on the same team. We're not going to tell you what to say. You do whatever you do like you would normally do, and just try and speak through it, talk through it. And I got much better at that at the end of the
Yep.
season than at the beginning. But having Miriam along with the ride was great. And just to have that dialogue, speak to each other.
Mhm.
um I couldn't imagine doing the show without her.
Right.
So I got lucky. But
Yeah.
Working with Gary was incredible. He and I are very close. There's a lot of really wonderful people there, and you feel like you're on the same team. And we argued, and sometimes the arguments got heated, but at the end of the day, we're pulling for each other. Like, and when poor Gary would spend day after day finding, bottle tops and stuff like that. And you'd just be like, oh, and then he'd have that great find, and you'd be like,
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
and that's what it was like. It was a big crew. Not everyone got along, but for the most part, we were pulling for one another. So to answer your question, Jack, I think Miriam did a heck of a job. We worked in the swamp. It was disgusting. We would be on site at 7:30 in the morning, and we'd work till usually 6:30 at night. Both of us we'd walk up, take off our microphones, go home, shower, eat supper, and go to bed. And we did that for 5 months. And I think it takes a special person like Miriam to do that.
Yep. And she's back. Tom was just asking, was she back on the island this year? Do you know? Are you aware of that?
I know. Let's just say I'm not going to say.
Okay.
Read into that what you will. I mean, I don't know why. It's not a secret. People know. Yes, she was on this season. Mm-hmm. She was asked back. So, and I'm sure she did a great job. Mm-hmm. I've spoken to her. Obviously, she can't tell me things about the show.
Yep.
But she was back and doing what Miriam does, digging and having fun.
And as Jack has mentioned, we noticed a change in her, just like with yourself. Although I thought right off, and that's kind of neat because now that we've been doing this revisit of season 8, I got to go from episode 1. Now we're into episode 16, and I watched how you changed even, but you were still right off the bat. You were pretty vocal about things. You found you were right up there saying, when you found the mound and they asked you guys to come out and look at the mound. And you had said, and I made sure I qualified this when I talked about it. You didn't say it was a serpent mound. You said it reminded you of a serpent mound. But I mean, for you to give your opinions right off the bat as being the new guy on the scene that year, you were very good right off the bat. I thought that you were giving your opinions. This is what I see. This is what I believe. And this is what we found. I mean, you didn't, all the way along, I thought you did a great job, and you did get better with it as you went along. I know that our friends I know our friends over at Could It Be Oak Island podcast, Deidre and Dustin White, they have all these little clips of people that say things throughout the year.
Oh, yes.
First they play that one of yours. You go, or what'd you say? Yeah, oh yeah, girl.
Oh yeah, girl. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, girl. They play that all the time, and it's so hilarious. But you became a person for us on the show that we could easily and happily live the island through your eyes and through your experiences. And that's what made it so good for us.
And relate to it.
Yes, well, exactly.
I'm passionate about archaeology. Mm-hmm. I love getting down and dirty. And it was a joy and a pleasure for me to be on that show. And I got caught up in, we're on a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
I knew about this island. My parents are from Nova Scotia. I knew about this since I was a little boy. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there going, how in the world did I end up digging on Oak Island on a TV show? And I just got caught up with it. And Ian Spooner said, my first day on the island, he said to me, Aaron, this is unlike anything you're going to do. You're going to get frustrated. There's going to be times you're going to want to pull what little hair you have left on your head out. But he said, embrace all of it.
Yep.
It's just all of it. It's a big adventure. And when I put it in my head, this is just an adventure, then I relaxed and I just had fun. And I mean, when you're working with people in that picture, like with Gary and Scott and Steve and Ian Spooner and Rick and Marty and Craig Tester and Jack, Alex. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. They're wonderful people to work with. And you can't help but get excited. And I was doing something I'm passionate about and I love, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
But something I have to ask you too, and we talked about it a little bit before you got here, was the piece of a leather strap. Or, we weren't sure if it was a piece of boot strap. It had the little holes that went along it. What was tell us a little bit about that, if you would. You found it in between the rocks and not like on top or something, correct?
Yeah, so I found it in between, which can suggest that it was dropped while the road was being built. But it's hard to say. I saw a leather strap. I thought it could be part of a watch band, part of a boot. After we got it cleaned up, then I more and more believed it probably did come from a leather book binding. When you first pulled it up, it was full of muck, and I just thought, man, maybe this is a watch strap or something like that. And again, usually I say these things in my head. And then you clean it off, you analyze it, and then in your notes you write, at first I believed it was this and blah 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 blah. But the producers want you to think out loud,
right?
And so the first thing that came into my head was, looks like a watch strap
or a belt. You said a belt or a watch strap or something,
yeah, or something from a boot. So you throw these ideas out, you take them back, you clean them up, you send them to experts. I mean, that's the incredible thing about working for the TV show Curse of Oak Island is any expert you needed, they got. You need a coin expert, you had one. You needed a leather expert, you got it. You needed a blacksmith expert on early traditional metalworks, you got it. So, having these resources at your fingertips was incredible. I mean, I'm never going to have that again.
Right.
In my work, you have money to send one sample away. Well, here on Oak Island, you send them all away.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that's exactly that's the nice part about it. You can send all those things away. You might have to wait a little while. And I know as an archaeologist working, on your own someplace, you say, okay, I got 3 things here. Well, let me pick which one I can afford to have tested.
exactly.
So I'll send it off, and then you might wait 2 or 3 months to get your answer back. Sometimes they wait a long time on the show as well, but sometimes they get them back relatively quick when they can talk to Krista Brousseau or someone like that, and they can usually get their answer back pretty quickly. But again, they have the resources that you working on your own would not have, I suppose, right?
Yeah,
And the money.
or working with the university. I mean, funds are tight. So this was Disneyland. This was awesome.
Yeah, Tom Burns asked a question. Wonder what was the biggest dud you ever found
on the show?
Yeah, or I guess so. Yeah, I guess he's relating it to the
I think
show.
what he's talking about.
Yeah, that may have seemed like it was good, but turned out it was nothing. You found so many things; it's hard to think, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm cynical by nature, so usually I think it's nothing. I'm not sure, to be honest. I know Gary had some great signals on his thing, and he's like, "Oh, this isn't metal. This isn't iron. This looks like some sort of precious metal." And then so we gather and we dig it up, and it'd be like, "Oh, it's a blasting cap."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So those are the ones that hurt, where he gets the tone that says gold or some precious metal.
Yeah, non-ferrous metal.
So poor Gary, he got the most duds, but for every 200 duds, he got something really cool.
Yeah, he did have some great finds for sure. Yeah, I was really curious about that leather. That was very interesting, and I think that what do you think? Let's turn that around and say, what do you think was the most interesting thing? I mean, you may have already mentioned it, but what do you think was the most interesting thing you found, or the one that
besides the road?
Besides the road itself, the entire road.
For me, it was the survey stakes.
Oh, okay.
Because we could date them.
Yes.
And we could follow them. And those were the 2 big things for me, because it's a lot of work, and you're going, is this really something? Like, am I losing it here? And then you'd get so discouraged, and you'd find this stake vertically placed. and you'd be like, okay, we're still on it.
Yeah.
So, those things were huge for me. And getting a date like 1680 back, crazy.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
on
before the
that spoils pile mound up in lot 15,
yes.
it was a spoils pile.
Right.
Right.
But finding that piece of iron in the charcoal that dated back
Yes.
to, I believe, 1420s.
Yes.
Correct me
Yes.
if I'm wrong.
I think you're right.
Well,
I think you're right.
You're right on that.
I mean, that's a game changer right there, and as Dr. Spooner and I always say, one date is no date. So you want to go back and find more of it, find other pieces of metal in charcoal so that you can get 2 or 3 or 4 dates on it.
Right.
Because one date, you're not going to put your career on one date. You're not going to rewrite history on one date.
Right.
But we know the First Nations, they weren't using iron.
Mm-mm.
So it was a European hands with a date of 1420 on it.
Wow.
So that kind of blows your mind. And that's why I said to Craig, it was in the war room. I said, Craig, we got to sample more of this. Send more of this away. So he sent samples of the charcoal that were encrusted on the piece of iron to 2 or 3 different labs that had no connection with one another.
Right.
And the dates came back the same.
Wow.
So
that was also the tallest point on the island, also, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I say that again, Jack?
There was the tallest point on the island, so that would mean something almost there.
It could, but what I'm thinking of, and I don't know how much time, this will just take a minute, but there's spoils piles, probably from Ted Nolan. So he was digging something up, and he dug something up that dated to the 1420s on it. Was it just a piece of driftwood that floated in? Maybe. Or did Fred Nolan see something that made him dig on that place?
Right.
And so he dumped it there. Maybe he had seen something. Maybe the original money pit is on the other end. Fred Nolan dug on that specific area for a reason. He just didn't go. He wasn't a go for going around digging holes everywhere. He dug on that place for a reason, and in that scoop came a piece of metal encrusted with charcoal dating to 1420.
Yep.
I think that's mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. You're absolutely right, because that predates everything. That predates everything. Yeah. I mean, the money pit was found in 1795. And we talked about, this was something that I had James Mcquiston joined us last Wednesday night. He called in for a little bit. And we were talking about the fact that between 1795, when the money pit was discovered, and going back to when the English and the French, there was people living on the island. There was resident people owned some of those lots. James Anderson, and he sold his lot to Samuel Ball. I mean, there was different people that lived on the island. So you're going to find some remnant of their life there as well. This goes back well before that, even when there should have been no one there. Exactly. As far as we know. That's very significant. Absolutely very significant. On the show, they were kind of leading us to believe that it was I think Rick had mentioned, or was hoping that was what that mound ended up being, was the spoils from the original money pit dig. Well, now we could never get an answer on that. Obviously, I don't think that's possible to get an answer on that. But what you just said, that's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I remember that now too. And I think you're right. I think that was the date. So, man, that's just, and what else, who would be there back then doing that kind of stuff that would be messing with that? That's the question we want an answer to so badly.
I want it as bad as everyone else.
We got a guy out on the I assume guy, I keep saying that, but it's out on the YouTube side. The Awoken one says, I have always been interested in Fred's theory that the swamp was the key to solving the mystery, and I think Fred knew a lot more than he let on about where the treasure could be buried. And he may have, because of his feuds that he had with Dan. If he had some inkling that Dan that it was somewhere on Dan's property or the property he was controlling, he probably wouldn't have said a word to him about it because he didn't want Dan to find it at that time. So that could, you never know. That could be. I mean, and I'm just going to throw this out to you. Fred, one of Fred's big things was that he felt that it was two islands, and that the swamp was man-made, and that possibly at one time a ship could have been brought in there, burned or whatever, and buried. What's your idea on that?
I think it's a good question, but I think I'm going to go with Dr. Spooner. I don't believe it was ever deep enough for a ship to go through there.
Yeah.
I just don't think so. But again, we were hoping to, this season coming up, the season that's just being shot now, go back into the swamp and do a real, more thorough excavation in there. So maybe they've done that. It'll be interesting to see. But I don't believe it was deep enough to hold a ship, maybe a small boat, but not a ship.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Tom just said, what about a barge? Yeah, maybe a barge, something smaller certainly could have. And they did find there has been a few interesting finds like that strap. And I forget who found that, but there was a piece of metal strap that was bent on one end that looked like it could have been for holding beams together. And it was burned really bad. Took it out to Carmen. Carmen looked at it and said, this was a very intense fire. Again, that plus, what else would that have been from other than some kind of boat decking or something like that? The wood pieces that they found, they could have floated in, just like the the barrel pieces could have floated in from somewhere over time, and it ended up settling there and then getting covered with muck and all that over the years. But a piece of metal kind of leads you to believe that they're, and some of the other pieces that they found that were heavy kind of leads you to believe there might have been some sort of a boat in there. But again, like you said, it probably never was deep enough to have a ship come through there. So the whole two island theory thing, and that would have been, think of the manpower to make that road, the manpower to fill that in so that it became one island instead of two. That would,
Dr. Spooner did say that wall was 1220.
Yeah, piece of wood. Yeah. Yeah, that's when you go back to one date. What did Ian say? We came to a class of mine and we were talking about radiocarbon dating. He said, radiocarbon dating is like dating a woman. One date is okay, but you want more and more and more dates in order to be secure in your relationship or something like that. He was much more eloquent than I. So one date, you don't hang your hat on one date. You want more. And that's why it's important to get more material to date from that area. There's so many ways that a date can be. There's contamination, mistakes from the lab, mistakes collecting it. So you can have a lot of mistakes coming from one sample. So you want more and more and as many samples as you can get, especially with a date of 1220. And also there's something called the reservoir effect, where if a piece of wood is in water for a long period of time, that's going to mess up the dates as well. It's a fascinating date, but again, I wouldn't put my career on that being a correct date. Hopefully they found more stuff that they can date there.
Yeah, for sure. So somebody I'm going to go back to and try to catch up with the rest of these here. We're running about an hour and 41 minutes, and we usually try to close it at 2 hours. But one of the people asked a question, and it sparked a memory. Let's see, who was this? It was Joe. Horsley asked the question, is Aaron still thinking of writing a book about the women of Oak Island? Were you working on that at one point?
I was considering that. It's still an interest of mine. So stay tuned. I would definitely, I think there's a really interesting story to be told there. It's been, women in history have been far too ignored. Their role in history has been, undervalued and undertold. And I think that, the women of Oak Island have a really good story. So I'm still interested. If I don't do it, I hope someone else does. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's still somewhere on my list of things.
The bucket list.
It's on my bucket list. I am still interested, and people are getting old, so I need to get on it if it's going to be done. Well, there's still people with living memories that go
Yes,
quite
exactly.
far back.
Yep, they can tell the stories. Yeah, absolutely true. Yep. Yeah, good stuff. So, all right, yeah, you're welcome to hang out with us. I'm going to continue on here a little bit because I know the strap comes up, and I didn't realize we hadn't quite got to it yet. Anyway, they were back over on the money pit. This is where we finally see Paul Troutman coming in the scene again. We hadn't seen him like all of season 8, and he shows up. He's over there helping them. And they're actually working on C4.5 at this point, looking to, it was a couple of feet away from C5. And again, they're chasing that wall. They're looking for that anomaly, that wood anomaly, as they're going towards where they think the money pit now is on the west side of the Tupper shaft rather than being on the east side of the Tupper shaft. So as they're chasing that, this was the C4.5 at 88 feet. Again, they're finding the wood chunks, which is that wall that they're following, that around 88 to 87 to 90 feet, somewhere around in that range. They're finding these chunks of wood and they're chasing them along to find out where this tunnel goes. They brought Rick out and he's taking a look at that as well. And I think that they were saying, and again, this is where the Tupper shaft is way over in here. And this was where they were figuring, okay, the money pit's in here. Now they're thinking over here. So that's why his finger's over here, because he's talking, well, maybe it's over this way further. They think that they did touch the edge of it with C1 because they came up with so much wood, and some of that wood dated back to 1607, or I'm sorry, 1706. Yeah, thanks, Jack. That they think that now they're looking going that way, but they still want to stay within, certain proximity to C1. And again, C1's the one that had the gold anomaly that they saw down there with the camera and all of that. This is where they found it. Yeah, you found that piece of leather, and you brought Craig over to have a look at it, and you laid it out on the rock there. And it had to be, like you had mentioned before, it had to be something that was the other part of a buckle, the buckle being on the other end. I think this is the way I saw it. The buckle being on the other end, this was the one with the holes down the center that would hook into the buckle. Is that about right?
Yes, and leather, if you submerge something in water, it can be beautifully preserved. I don't know if you've heard of the bog bodies over in Ireland, but they've brought up, incredibly well preserved 2,000-3,000-year-old people with, you can still see the tattoos on them. Like,
oh, I have heard of that. Yes, yes.
So leather can, that well preserved piece of leather could be hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Yep. Wow.
If it had stayed submersed.
Right. Yeah. And it could definitely have been part of I think that when he took it over to Joe and Joe looked at it, he said, Joe Landry, and he said something about it could very well have been from a book, closing, that piece that would close the book up, the strap to keep it closed, a ship's log or something like that.
And how long was that? Do you remember?
Sorry, Jack?
How long was that strap? Do you remember by chance?
Oh, trying to do centimeters to inches, probably 6 inches, 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah, it seems about right. Yeah, from the look of it there. Yeah, because there was one point where you were holding it in your hand. And yeah, I think you're right. Probably about 7 inches long, something like that. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, cool finds. I mean, just good, really cool stuff. Yeah, it could have floated in, but generally when you said you found it down like in between the rocks, that kind of tells you that it very well was there during the making of the road to begin with. But is that for certain? No, but very likely. Yeah. Next part of the show, they jump over to the Ball property, which was another very interesting. Laird and Liz spent most of their time, at least in this portion of the season, working in the Ball property, where you and Miriam worked on the road, which both are interesting places.
Absolutely.
Get more information. There's Laird down in the cellar. I guess that would have been the cellar of the Ball house, or at least a building, one of his buildings, working away. And then you got Gary and Rick were over there doing a little bit of metal detecting. And they were given permission by Laird to come over and do the metal detecting. And right off the bat, they find a piece. He had a bunch of little flags. You see all these little flags in the ground behind him. Here's all these little flags. Not all of those were his. Some of them were his. Some of them were other markings. When they did that, I think they do a scan. They ran the ground penetrating radar, I thought, over that area as well. I think at some point.
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Excuse me. So some of those markers I think were theirs, and then some of them were Gary's. But he came across this piece that initially he had said something about. He thought maybe it was the back of a watch, a pocket watch, and that the cover on the back or something like that. It kind of looked like it in that picture. This one, not so much, but you never know. It's hard to say. It was definitely metal because it was picked up on his metal detector.
Yeah.
That was another interesting find. I don't know if I don't think we ever got an answer as to what that was.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think they showed us on the show. This is when Charles and Doug went over to the Dawson print shop and had Joe Landry take a look at that strap that you found.
That's right.
And then he gave his assessment on it. You can see right there, I was trying to get a better picture showing the little holes that went along, which would definitely indicate that it was part of a buckle strap. Initially I thought when I first saw it, I was thinking like a lot of times you see those two leather straps on the side of a boot and you grab those leather, pulling your bootstraps up. You grab those to pull a boot on. That's what I thought at first until you had indicated that it had the little holes along there, which would mean it was some sort of a buckle strap of some sort.
Right.
I think he said, let's see, where did I find that? I think he dated that to
15 to 1600s. They was
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was 15 to 1600s.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that was an excellent find. That's an excellent find that you had there, and that's just having that eye looking for stuff. I mean, that you talked about how the road just fascinates you, and you would still be there now digging it, more really following the whole thing and digging it even better.
Yeah.
If you could do that.
Yeah.
I know there's like there's probably about 500,000 of us would do it with you. Quite honestly, I'm one of them. I would.
We could move a lot of dirt if I had that many.
Oh boy, could you?
Just think of the things we could find. Anyway,
Yeah.
so here's a picture of they showed a picture of one that might very well, it could have been something like this. They showed in the picture.
That's great.
Then they're back out doing a little bit more work, Gary and Rick. Then he found a button that he flipped over. That's the back side of it, of course. And the front side, couldn't really see any marking or anything on it, but definitely a neat looking button for sure. One of the things that he found that was not a bottle cap, for sure. Then, of course, we get into the picture there of that. One of the things I did want to ask you while I had you on, and before we get to the end of the pictures here, was when you got out down to the road and at the very end of the season, when you were at the Nolan property, you turned and you went up the hill. Now, I was thinking when I saw the first 20-foot by 70-foot stretch going across, I thought, well, why didn't it just go up the hill? And then somebody had explained, it might have been you when I had you on the show, that would have been a really hard haul for the oxen to pull a cart up that hill.
Yeah.
You don't get the perspective of just how high that hill is.
Yeah,
so
it's steep.
Making that zigzag effect where you go up like you would see going a road, going up a mountain, you make a zigzag. You go off to the left and then you curve and come back. Did it curve and start coming back towards lot 15 or the money pit?
When we finished, we had found, and this is where, it was great having Gary come in. But so we knew eventually it had to turn. So we kept looking, when's it going to turn? When's it going to turn? And, it kept going, obviously kept going. And then we found the stakes. So the stakes were placed on the swamp side, and they helped turn us up.
Okay.
The following stakes, they turned us up. Now there's so much damage and bulldozing on the upland area that we took a shot, and with Dr. Spooner, Miriam, we went up and we looked at an area that hadn't been touched, that we believe was original. And so Miriam and I put some test units in, and we found ox shoes. Gary came with his metal detector, so we found some ox shoes. We found some coal, and we found some early pottery. So we believe that we had caught a section of the road when it turned up.
Cool.
And as you said, it was at the end of the season.
Yep.
And I really wished I could have finished looking at that. because I wasn't 100%. And no, you're never going to get 100%.
Right.
But I was so close to saying, yes, this is part of the road. And then we wrapped up. So
Right.
hopefully they've gone back and they've continued to follow that. So then you just keep following it. And hopefully it'll lead you back to the money pit. I
Yep.
don't know. But
Yeah, or lot 15, because I know there was talk when you were there at the beginning of the season. There was talk about the pine tar kiln, which is where you guys were working initially with David McGinnis.
right.
And that,
Possible pine tar kiln.
yeah, and I wasn't, I wasn't convinced on that. I obviously there was a burn event. I think you guys determined there was a burn event there, significant burn event, and the way it was structured and the things you were finding. But I wasn't sold on the pine tar kiln. I can understand it, but what's your take? I mean, what did you?
I think the most David and I got, I'll speak for myself. I got to about 75% pine tar kiln.
Okay.
It had the right shape, but where's the pine tar? We had soil sampled at the bottom and there was no pine tar. And you know, what's pine tar? It's amber. Well, you find amber with, dinosaur blood and mosquitoes in it. So it can last millions of years. And we didn't find any of it at the bottom.
I'm sorry, I'm choking over here. I had down
it's a lot to swallow. I know what I'm saying. No, I'm with you on that.
Yep.
And it could go one of two ways. It could be for the money pit or for repairing ships.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know there were pine tar kilns because you had to make your own pine tar.
Yep.
You either got it from New England or you got it from Finland. Well, if you're in the, in off Nova Scotia and you need pine tar, you're going to make your own.
Right.
So it had the right shape, but it didn't have the smoking gun at the bottom.
Right.
So,
and that's the thing that I was really looking for. If it was going to be a pine tar kiln, where's the residue? And so, I mean, it kind of looked like it. And again, we have to go by the assessment of the professionals like yourself and David McGinnis looking at this and making that determination. But
that's why archaeologists, we take such meticulous notes.
Yep.
And we document everything because I'm only 70%, 75% it was a pine tar kiln. In 100 years, an archaeologist might come, look at the notes we took and go, oh, well, it's obviously a this, you know? Mm-hmm. So you always are doing everything for the archaeologist that comes 50, 100 years down the road. So they'll know exactly what you're doing.
Yep.
And so that they can take a shot at figuring out what it is.
Yep.
So if not, you had the documentation for the road and everything else like that.
Yeah, we document everything.
Yep. So if not a pine tar kiln, what do you think it could have been?
No idea. I mean, I always say the simplest answer is usually the right answer. The simplest answer is the pine tar kiln. But again, I'm only going to go 75%, 80% in on that. There's still 20% of me screaming, but you didn't find any residue.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was left with is where's the residue? Yeah. Now we know that Gary and I think it was Jack Begley at the time were finding between the swamp where you were working on the road between there and the lot 15, the pine tar kiln, is we're gonna call it that because we don't know what else to call it at this point.
Yeah.
The rock feature. Between the two of them, he were finding like a pathway of these oxen shoes and ox nails and stuff like that, which would indicate there was a pathway through there at some point. Right. So there was some traffic going to and from that rock feature. What it was doing, we just simply don't know. I mean, was it a blacksmith area that they had set up that they were shoeing? You would have probably found a lot more ox shoe nails and things like that had been dropped, and I don't think you found very many of those over there.
No, when you find blacksmithing areas, there's a lot of slag you find, like a lot, like buckets, and so we found just a little bit, and it was slag that that was created, I believe, over a lot of long period of time. So I don't believe it was a blacksmithing area, or not one like we'd think of it as, maybe a
Right.
quick little one.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Something set up shit quickly, and they would have needed to. I mentioned this earlier, but they would have needed to, simply because the number of oxen that were there, and we found all their shoes all over the place. They would have had to replace them. What do you
Yeah.
do for that? That's a blacksmith making those, and then shoeing the oxen with those. So yeah, that would have made sense. Wow, I tell you what, this has been great. I am so glad you came by today.
I
I tell you
enjoyed
what,
it as well.
I certainly I know you're not on the island this season, but I tell you what, if you get a chance, hopefully you'll be back out there. And if you get an opportunity, if they haven't figured out what's going on with the road by now, which we don't know, where their area. They had the same kind of thing happen again this year, where they got out late start because of COVID. The guys had to go through their quarantine again when they got out there. Things didn't really get going with the team. The American team, until July, probably again, around July 4th or beginning of July. So they may have very well ended up with a season like they had last year. But we hope that if they haven't, that we hope we see you back out there again. Your expertise on the show, I think, was phenomenal. And I think the fact that you, like I had mentioned earlier, and Jack had mentioned too, that you're so down to earth, and we can relate to you in that respect. And so we get to watch and live this through your eyes, as well as some of the other people out there as well. But that's what carried us along. And it was an opportunity for us to really get down and live it through you and see how you were seeing things. And I can't thank you enough for that. And I really hope that you get back out there. If it doesn't, well, we'll see. Now you got the Cuban project going up. When does that get kicking off?
Oh yeah, thank you, and thank you for those kind words. We're going on February 13th to the 27th. We're going for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I've got a couple spaces left. We're almost filled up. So Cuba's opening up on November 15th, and it's open to American citizens because it's an educational event. And the Cuban people are amazing. It's going to be on a 19th century slave plantation, one of the largest in the Caribbean.
Wow.
Where it housed over 450 African American or African men, women, and children. And we'll be spending 7 days doing excavations, and then back in Havana, cleaning and processing the artifacts, going to museums and such. So if you're interested, drop me a note. I can give you more details. We have a couple spaces left, and I appreciate you letting me talk about that.
Oh, for sure.
Well, we really appreciate you being on the show, and maybe during the year, if we don't understand things as they come through, to have you back on just to straighten us back out as
our professional consultant. Yes,
well, it's my pleasure. So whenever I can, I'm happy to pitch in, and it's a great story, and I'm going to follow along and pull for everyone, and hopefully, they'll find that treasure. And if not, I know they're going to be telling more of the story of Oak Island, and so I wish them well.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. And if you would, I know you're a member of our group. If you get an opportunity, maybe jump on there. You might get some takers. I would love to go. I don't have much free time to myself anymore these days, but I would love to go. But I know Deidre's talked about it. I think Deidre wants to go. Right. So, you hear that, folks? A couple of spaces left. Dr. Taylor, if you get an opportunity in our group, maybe you could throw something up on our group as a post.
Yeah, I have a poster made up.
Where people can inquire about it, because you may get some takers for sure on that. You got 2 spots open. You hear that, folks? Going to Cuba in February. What was the date again?
13th to 27th. Awesome. 2 weeks.
Get out of the winter weather.
Yeah, get out of the winter weather for a little while.
Yeah, it's beautiful in February. The hotel's in a beautiful nature preserve. It's beautiful. So, if it's on your bucket list to get your hands dirty, then
I would love to
contact me, and I'll give you all the information. And
I do have a little trowel. Believe it or not, I do have one of those. It's probably not like the special ones that you have. I know you've got some that you we talked about that last time that are very special that you've ordered.
We name them. Yeah. They're all, but no experience is necessary. 2 years ago we went and we had a 14-year-old digging beside an 81-year-old.
Wow.
Their first times. So yeah.
All right.
So it's a wonderful experience. So
all right. Well, thank you. And thank you
guys.
Thank
Yep.
you.
And happy
All right.
Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that wraps it up for us. And wow, that was great having Aaron come out with us today.
This was a great show.
That was awesome. And we're really happy that he did and join us today. So anyway, we're glad you were here with us too, to experience that and also talk about episodes 15 and 16. Now we will be back on Wednesday and we will be talking about the, that'll be episodes 17 and 18 on Wednesday, the 13th. That's at 7:30. And then I'm off on the 16th. So there will be no show for us on the 16th. I'm taking that weekend off. The only one in a while, all the way through the season premiere, that I'll be taking off and heading out of town that weekend. So, but anyway, thanks for being here, folks. And if you're out there on YouTube, please click on that subscribe button for us. We appreciate that very much. And if you want to know about new content coming up, click on that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as we go and put up new content, whether it be live or whether it be a recorded video that we put up there. And Patreon, if you're out, if you would like to help support the show, we do have some people that are patrons of us, and we appreciate you all very, very much. It does help to pay for all of this and be able to put on a good show for you guys. And that's why we do this, because we love interacting with everybody. You hear me say it when we welcome new guests, that we love to have the conversation. Come join the discussion. So that's what we're here for. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you on Wednesday at 7:30. Jack Campbell, thank you. Jan and Linda, thank you guys for what you do. And we'll see you next time right here on the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. Bye-bye now.